Dr. Ethan Wallace had always prided himself on his professionalism. As a seasoned medical examiner, he had seen countless bodies come through his morgue, each one a silent witness to the fragility of life. But today was different. The moment he walked into the cold, sterile room, he felt an unusual sense of unease. The body on the table was that of a young woman, no older than 25. Her name was Emily Hart. She had been found lifeless in her apartment, and the circumstances of her death were shrouded in mystery. Dr. Wallace had read the preliminary report. No signs of struggle, no obvious cause of death. Just a beautiful, lifeless woman who had left behind more questions than answers. As he stood over her, he couldn't help but notice how serene she looked, almost as if she were merely sleeping. Her auburn hair cascaded over the edge of the table, and her pale skin seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. It was hard not to admire her beauty, even in death. There was something hauntingly poetic about it. He shook his head, trying to focus. He had a job to do, and he couldn't afford to be distracted by his own thoughts. He donned his gloves, picked up his scalpel, and prepared to make the incision, the first step in any autopsy. But as he brought the blade to her skin, something unexpected happened. His hand jerked, and the scalpel slipped, leaving a jagged, shallow cut across her chest. He cursed under his breath, his heart pounding. This had never happened to him before. He was always steady, always precise. What was it about this case that had him so off balance? He took a deep breath and steadied his hand. He couldn't afford to make another mistake. With a renewed sense of determination, he continued the incision, his mind racing with questions. What had caused her death? Was it foul play or something more insidious? He needed to find answers, not just for his own peace of mind, but for Emily's family, who were undoubtedly desperate for closure. As he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this case, something hidden beneath the surface. He examined her organs one by one, searching for any clue that might shed light on her mysterious demise. And then, as he inspected her heart, he found it a small, almost imperceptible puncture wound, barely visible to the naked eye. His breath caught in his throat. This was no accident, no natural cause. This was deliberate. Someone had killed her, and they had gone to great lengths to make it look like she had simply slipped away in her sleep. He felt a surge of anger, his professional detachment giving way to a fierce desire for justice. He documented his findings meticulously, knowing that this tiny puncture wound would be the key to solving the mystery of Emily's death. As he finished the autopsy, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility. Emily's life had been cut short, but he could give her the one thing she deserved: the truth. The following weeks were a whirlwind of investigation and revelations. Dr. Wallace worked closely with the detectives, piecing together the puzzle of Emily's life and untimely death. They discovered that she had been involved with a powerful and dangerous man, a wealthy businessman named Victor Lang. He was known for his charm and influence, but beneath his polished exterior lay a dark and ruthless personality. Emily had discovered something about Victor, something that could ruin him, and in an attempt to silence her, he had gone to great lengths to stage her death as natural. Dr. Wallace often found himself working late into the night, poring over every detail, every clue. His normally organized desk became cluttered with files, photographs, and notes. He was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. One evening, as he reviewed Emily's phone records, something caught his eye. A series of messages from an unknown number, filled with threats and warnings. Emily had clearly been terrified, but she had also been brave, refusing to back down. This only fueled Dr. Wallace's resolve. He shared his findings with Detective Laura Monroe, a sharp and relentless investigator who had been assigned to the case. Together, they tracked down the number to a burner phone, tracing it back to one of Victor Lang's associates. It was a breakthrough, but it also meant they were dealing with a well-organized operation, one that wouldn't hesitate to eliminate anyone who got too close. The deeper they dug, the more dangerous the investigation became. Dr. Wallace started receiving anonymous threats, urging him to drop the case. But he refused to be intimidated. Emily deserved justice, and he wasn't about to let her down. One night, as he was leaving the morgue, he noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It had been there for hours, and now it was following him. His heart raced as he took a series of unexpected turns, trying to shake his pursuers. He finally managed to lose them, but it was clear he was being watched. The next day, he found his office ransacked. Files were missing, including the crucial autopsy report. He immediately called Detective Monroe, who arranged for police protection. But the incident only made him more determined. Victor Lang had to be brought to justice, and time was running out. Dr. Wallace and Detective Monroe worked tirelessly, connecting the dots and gathering evidence. They uncovered a network of corruption, with Victor Lang at the center, pulling strings and eliminating threats. But they also found allies, people who had been wronged by Lang and were willing to testify. The case finally broke wide open when they discovered security footage from a nearby building, showing Victor Lang entering Emily's apartment the night she died. It was the smoking gun they needed. With this evidence, they secured a warrant for Lang's arrest. The trial was intense, with Lang's lawyers throwing every obstacle in their path. But Dr. Wallace's testimony was unwavering. His detailed account of the autopsy and the puncture wound painting a clear picture of murder. Detective Monroe presented the phone records and security footage, building an irrefutable case. In the end, justice prevailed. Victor Lang was found guilty of Emily's murder and sentenced to life in prison. The courtroom erupted in applause, and Dr. Wallace felt a wave of relief wash over him. Emily's family hugged him, tears of gratitude in their eyes. As he left the courthouse, Dr. Wallace couldn't help but reflect on the journey. He had faced threats, danger, and sleepless nights, but it had all been worth it. Emily's story had been told, and her killer was behind bars. It was a reminder of why he did this job, to give a voice to the voiceless, to uncover the truth, and to seek justice no matter the cost. But the story didn't end there. In the months that followed the trial, Dr. Wallace found himself haunted by the memory of Emily. He had always been able to compartmentalize his work, to leave the dead behind when he went home at night. But Emily was different. Her case had burrowed its way into his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. He began to delve deeper into her life, speaking with her friends and family, piecing together the story of a young woman who had been full of life and promise. Emily had been an aspiring journalist, passionate about uncovering the truth. It was this passion that had led her to Victor Lang, and ultimately to her death. Dr. Wallace learned that Emily had been working on an exposé about Lang's business dealings. She had uncovered evidence of money laundering, bribery, and even murder. She had been planning to publish her findings, to bring Lang's empire crashing down. But he had found out, and he had silenced her before she could reveal the truth. Armed with this new information, Dr. Wallace couldn't rest until he saw it through. He contacted the newspaper Emily had been working for, sharing everything he had learned. Together, they published a series of articles, bringing Lang's crimes to light. The public was outraged, and more witnesses came forward, emboldened by Emily's story. The fallout was immense. Lang's associates were arrested, his businesses seized. Dr. Wallace watched as the empire Lang had built crumbled around him, all because of one brave young woman who had refused to be silenced. Through it all, Dr. Wallace felt a sense of peace. He had done more than just perform an autopsy. He had carried on Emily's work, ensuring that her death had not been in vain. He had given her a voice, and in doing so had brought about real change. As he stood in his quiet morgue, the memory of Emily's serene face still vivid in his mind, he made a silent promise to himself to always seek the truth, no matter where it might lead, and to never let the beauty of life or death distract him from his duty. Emily's case had changed him, deepened his resolve, and reminded him of the profound responsibility he carried with every autopsy he performed. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put a link down below about something very interesting you'll like. Go check that out. Subscribe for more daily content. See you on the next one.